14 of the fantasy baseball season, and here's a few hitters I would look to drop this week. The first guy is Michael Conforto of the New York Mets. So Conforto, he came back about 2 weeks ago from injury with a hamstring injury, and even before that, he was struggling on the season. 2 home runs, 15 RBIs, 14 runs scored, a 204 batting average, and a 341 on base percentage. But the last couple weeks for him, it's been rock bottom. No home runs, 2 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a 118 batting average, and a 295 on base percentage. So right here, he's not producing, he's not hitting the baseball, and he's had a lot of over games over the last few games here with Conforto for this Met team. And this Met team, they haven't hit as a whole really this season much, except a few games here and there. So the last couple games for Conforto: June 29th at Atlanta, 1 for 4. June 30th at Atlanta, 0 for 3. July 1st at Atlanta, 1 for 4 with a rib. July 3rd at the Yankees, 0 for 4. July 4th in a doubleheader at the Yankees, 0 for 4 with 2 runs scored. And then versus the Milwaukee Brewers, July 5th, 1 for 4 in that game. So right here, he's not producing, he's not hitting the baseball, and he's in a slump big time right now. The only telling sign for me is he's in a contract season, and maybe he'll lead up after the All-Star break. But right now, I don't really think he's worthy of a fantasy roster spot here in 10 or 12 team leagues. Is Conforto. The next hitter I would drop is Yermin Mercedes of the Chicago White Sox. So Mercedes, he was off to a roaring start early in the season, but he was also a guy I said to sell high the first few weeks of the season, where it's not going to be sustainable hitting him in high 3s, 400 range. And on the season, 7 home runs, 37 RBIs, 26 runs scored, a 271 batting average, and a 328 on base. So right here, Mercedes, the last couple weeks before he got sent down, no home runs, 3 RBIs, 4 runs scored, 364 batting average, and 462 on base. But right here, this guy don't play a position. He's not useful in National League ballparks, obviously, when the White Sox go there. And the White Sox, they got a lot of different options. They could use a DH anyway with Andrew Vaughn, Gavin Sheets, who I mentioned as a waiver wire pickup, who got called up from Mercedes, and obviously Jose Abreu as well. So right now, he was the odd man out, and we definitely could see him later in the season. But right now, with him not active, he's not worth the stash, in my opinion, on your Rene list, and he's definitely a player I would look to drop this week. And he's already been dropped, Mercedes, in 15% of fantasy leagues since last week. So right now, he's an easy drop, especially that he's not in the major leagues. The next hit I would look to drop this week's Abdul Herrera of the Philadelphia Phillies. So Herrera, early in the season, he was playing good baseball. After the last 2 seasons, we haven't seen him in the major leagues. But right now, it's been a struggle for him as Herrera. On the season, 5 home runs, 22 RBIs, a 243 batting average, 296 on base with 32 runs scored and 4 stolen bases. So right there, those numbers aren't eye-popping. But the last couple weeks, he has nothing going as Herrera. No home runs, 4 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a 133 batting average, and a 163 on base. So right now, he's still playing every day here for this Philadelphia Philly team, and still even hitting leadoff, but he's not getting on base. He's not getting hits, and I know he qualifies at second base as well here in fantasy baseball, but right now, he's not a player worth a roster spot, in my opinion. The last few games for him: June 30th versus Miami, 0 for 4 with an RBI. July 2nd versus San Diego, 1 for 4 with a run. July 3rd versus San Diego, 0 for 4. July 4th versus San Diego, he only pinched hit in that ball game, 0 for 2. And right now, he's not producing, he's not getting on base, he's not setting the table for the Phillies, and he's not good at any one thing here for fantasy owners. So right now, Herrera is definitely an easy drop this week. The next hitter is Ahmed Rosario of the Cleveland Indians. So Rosario, he was a hot pickup a few weeks ago, where he went on one of his classic midseason hot streaks. But right now, Rosario, he hasn't done much. So on the season for Rosario here, 5 home runs, 23 RBIs, 7 stolen bases, a 264 batting average, and a 315 on base with 39 runs scored. But the last couple weeks here for Rosario, he hasn't done anything at all. 1 home run, 2 RBIs, 4 runs scored, a 191 batting average, and a 224 on base percentage. So he was a big pickup, I believe, week 11 or week 12 here. But right now, he's only got 3 hits as Rosario in the last 4 or 5 games here for this team. So he's not hitting the baseball. He's not getting on base, but he's still batting second here for this Indian roster. But right now, he's not worthy of a roster spot, and he's an easy drop this week. The last few games for him. June 30th versus the Detroit Tigers for Rosario, 0-for-6 in a doubleheader. July 1st versus Houston, 1-for-4. July 2nd, 1-for-5 versus Houston. July 3rd for him versus Houston, 0-for-4. July 4th, 1-for-4. And July 5th at Tampa Bay, he was 0-for-4 in that ball game. So right now, he's not producing. He's not hitting the baseball, and he's an easy drop, in my opinion, this week. And the fifth and final hitter I would look to drop this week's Andrew McCutchen of the Philadelphia Phillies. So right here, McCutchen, he's up there in age, obviously. He's not at his MVP levels like he was the last few seasons before going to Philly. And right now, at this point, he's just a guy swinging for the fences. And he's hitting a decent amount of homers, 13 on the year. But right now, 13 home runs, 41 RBIs, 42 runs scored, 6 stolen bases, 227 batting average, and a 350 on base, which is the only good thing here for McCutchen on the season. Good, decent power, and a pretty decent on base, especially with a 227 batting average. But the last couple weeks for him, it's been nothing of anything to be happy about here for fantasy owners. 1 homer, 6 RBIs, 8 runs, 3 stolen bases, a 219 batting average, and a 395 on base percentage. So right now, at this point, McCutchen, he's pretty much living off his name in fantasy leagues, in my opinion. Still owned in 66%. In my opinion, he probably should be owned halfway in about 50% of leagues. He's not driving the ball the last couple weeks. He's not getting on base with a batting average, and the only thing he's right now is on base percentage. But that's not going to be enough to roster a roster spot in most fantasy leagues, in my opinion. So the last few games for him: June 29th versus Miami, 1-for-4 with an RBI. June 30th versus Miami, 0-for-2 with a run. July 2nd versus San Diego, 0-for-4 with a run. July 3rd versus San Diego, 1-for-2 with a run. July 4th, 0-for-3 versus San Diego. So right now, he's only got McCutchen 2 hits since June 29th, and that's not a telling sign. He's batting 5th in his Philly lineup most nights, or 2nd. But he's just not hitting the baseball. And like I said, he's only an on-base guy with occasional pop. So right now, this week, I think he's an easy drop. And that's a few hitters I would look to drop here in Week 14 of the fantasy baseball season.